Alright, hey everybody. I was a little exhausted earlier, so I didn't quite get to doing the Art of War action in the car. I got a couple of notes on today's topic. So we're on chapter 5 now. So we'll go ahead and dive straight on in to the big book. Chapter 5 is on energy, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from this. So today we're going to be doing, I think, verses 1 through 3 is what I have in the notes. Ooh, that's fun right there. So SunTzu said, "The control of a large force is the same principle as the control of a few men. It is merely a question of dividing up their numbers." Verse 2. "Fighting with a large army under your command is no wise different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signals. To ensure that your whole host may withstand the brunt of the enemy's attack and remain unshaken, this is effected by maneuvers, direct and indirect." I think we're going to do 4 as well. "That the impact of your army may be like a grindstone dashed against an egg. This is affected by the science of weak points and the strong." I like that because he has direct and indirect, signs and signals, weak and strong, and I think that there's a lot that can come from that as far as interpretations go. So let's go to the pocketbook version, and now we are in force there. Wang Chi says, "Force means shifts in accumulated energy or momentum. Skillful warriors are able to allow the force of momentum to seize victory for them without exerting their strength." Master Sun says, "Governing a large number as though governing a small number is a matter of division into groups. Battling a large number as though battling a small number is a matter of forms and calls." So as we see in the small book, they've gone ahead and included 1 and 2 in 1. Cao says, "Forms and calls refer to the formations and signals used to dispose troops and coordinate movements." So I think that there's a little bit more to take from 1 and 2 than there are in the translation before moving on. So in business and just team building in general, if you do have a large force, like if you are a big team or however it is, it's better to divide them up and then let them be managed as separate divisions. And so naturally over time, most places, especially military and things like that, large organizations, they divide and conquer, things get compartmentalized. And on the flip side, as far as maybe attacking, quote unquote, for the metaphor, going against another business or taking on a new market or trying to launch a new product, what we want to do is we want to divide and conquer, eat the elephant one bite at a time. Fighting with a large army under your command is no different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signals. I think that what's important here is that whether you're a small company or a large company, whether your goals are massive goals, taking over the world maybe, versus maybe just losing 10 pounds by the end of the next 6 months. It's really just a matter of instituting the right signs and signals, but in this case, signals to yourself, signals to the company, to your employees, making sure that things make sense, and then directing and delegating properly. All right. So there's more to take from that, I think, than just having those two moved into one section. Master Sun says, making the armies able to take on opponents without being defeated is a matter of unorthodox and orthodox methods. This one gets a lot of discussion and interpretations from a couple of different people. So in verse 3, he says this is affected by maneuvers, direct and indirect. And the pocketbook translation uses orthodox and unorthodox. So I went ahead and looked up a brief definition of orthodox so that we don't get too caught in the weeds of the religious side of it. The base definition of orthodox is conforming to established doctrine or conforming to an ideology. So from SunTzu, of course, being the ideology of war and how war is fought. For me, I immediately thought of the Revolutionary War and how it was orthodox at the time to line up your armies across from each other because you had musket guns and you just moved, forces on the battlefield maneuvered, and you had a drummer boy, and you just lined up, and then you fired, and then you fell back, and you reloaded while the next force in line fired, and then you marched forward, and it was very methodical. And that was the generally accepted rules of war. I mean, it was a gentleman's thing, I guess, when they would go out and and it's just the rebel forces, us, the revolutionaries, we knew that we would never overcome that. We didn't have the numbers, and we didn't have the firepower, and we needed an unorthodox style. We needed something new. So let's see what some of the interpretations say. GLN says, when you meet opponents head-on with coordinated surprise attacks all around, you can always win and never lose. Ho Yanqi, a military body goes through myriad transformations in which everything is blended. Nothing is not orthodox, nothing is not unorthodox. If the militia is raised for a just cause, that is orthodox. If it adapts to change in face of an enemy, that is unorthodox. What is orthodox for you, cause opponents to see as unorthodox. What is unorthodox for you, cause opponents to see as orthodox. The orthodox is also the unorthodox, and the unorthodox is also the orthodox. And all of this makes me think that this whole thing is a paradox. Generally, in military operations, there is always the orthodox and the unorthodox, or the straightforward and the surprise. Victory without use of both orthodox and unorthodox methods is a lucky win and what amounts to a brawl. Basically, all of that to say, Ho Yanqi says, all is fair in love and war. And in today's day and age, with starting businesses, with being successful, and finding your passion, and finding things that drive you, nothing is orthodox. You don't need to follow the rules. You don't need to go by the book. You don't need to do what somebody else did in order to achieve your dreams. I mean, if you look at one of the books that I've talked about recently, The 4-Hour Workweek, and how Tim Ferriss completely uprooted a lot of orthodox ideas about how you should do your life. And he was wildly successful in being unorthodox by delegating tasks to overseas and trying to automate things and just seeking ways to be more efficient with his time. There's a lot to be learned in that manner for not only your business but for your personal life, and then just any challenges that you might encounter along the way. don't always approach things from a this is how it is and this is how it needs to be. There's a great book that I read years ago called First Break All the Rules by Jack Welch, and that book will absolutely help you think a little differently about how the view from the top down goes. Otherwise, if you don't think outside the box, but also know the rules, orthodox, unorthodox, it's a lucky win in what amounts to a brawl. If you don't know that, then it's a brawl. So if you go in without knowing the rules to play by and the rules of the game or the industry or launching a product or anything like that, and you're not ready to adapt by bringing in something to change it up, then it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be a fight tooth and nail, and you're going to have to claw your way to the top. It's going to be a brawl. All right. Zhang Yu says, various people have different explanations of what is orthodox and what is unorthodox. Orthodoxy and unorthodoxy are not fixed, but are like a cycle. Emperor Taizong of the Tang Dynasty, a famous warrior and administrator, spoke of manipulating opponents' perceptions of what is orthodox and what is unorthodox, then attacking unexpectedly, combining both into one, becoming inscrutable to opponents. That is a lot to digest from what Emperor Taizong did. It sounds like he was able to control rumors and misinformation and disinformation and spread it to opposing forces about how he might follow the rules in the fight to come and then use a different tactic entirely. This might be more akin to a more competitive market. Maybe if you're a realtor or a financial advisor, or you're in some form of sales position where there is a lot more competition. So that kind of, direct and indirect. I'm reading from this book because I want to quote directly and attribute what is written here, but anything about orthodox and unorthodox is direct or indirect, and basically, do you conform to the ideology of the time, or are you conforming to established doctrine? And so Zhang Yu, to kind of wrap this up and tie this back to chapter 4, when Emperor Taizong spoke of manipulating opponents' perceptions, that can go back to chapter 4 about formation, how he controls the layout of the battlefield. He controls what the enemy is going to be expecting, so he holds the power for victory. Okay, last one, number 4. For the impact of armed forces to be like stones thrown on eggs is a matter of emptiness and fullness. Cao Cao says, attack complete emptiness with complete fullness. Jing Yu says, a later chapter says that good warriors make others come to them and do not go to others. This is the principle of emptiness and fullness of others and self. When you induce opponents to come to you, then their force is always empty. As long as you do not go to them, your force is always full. Attacking emptiness with fullness is like throwing stones on eggs. The eggs are sure to break. I'm just rereading it again. Well, Zhang Yu has a very deep interpretation of that impact of your army may be like a grindstone dashed against an egg. This is affected by the science of weak points and strong. So Zhang Yu is basically, number one, he says a later chapter, but I also think he's tying it back to formation. You want to get a good warrior makes others come to them and do not go to others, but formation as well. If you can get the opponent to come onto your ground, familiar ground, then they are going to be in a weaker position. So if you are in a situation where you're launching a new product, starting a new company, if you're familiar with the market or the area, if it's not an internet-only digital product or something like that, then try to get your prospective clients to come to you. Don't go out and throw stones on eggs. So I hope you guys found that helpful and or interesting. If there were any comments or quotations that you found particularly intriguing, please drop them in the comments below so that others may get insight into some things that they may have missed, and just to generate a little bit of discussion. As always, hit that like and subscribe button, and thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.